So we discussed about how the rich are getting richer in terms of our data and how people were getting poorer just because we were sharing the data. You must hand it to the Europeans. They saw the threat, and in one of the world's first, and I would say one of the finest pieces of legislation in terms of data privacy up to date, the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, came into force. It came in on the 25th of May, 2018. And from then, it has actually changed the way companies interact with people and their data, how they store their data. It basically started this movement of ensuring this data security, information security, because they were mandated by the European Union in their standards. When it started, so much so that some people didn't understand these regulations, some of the US media companies banned IPs that were coming in from Europe because they couldn't wrap their heads around the European Union data privacy legislation. So there are still some media networks that actually ban European traffic coming in because they don't understand. How did this change? You would notice now when you go to a website, they ask you, please, is it okay for us to, track you using cookies? People sometimes show you a data privacy policy, and they say that we are collecting all this information about you. Please say accept. I, of course, have my reservations about that, but I'll come to that later. But you see that. And you see there are so many policies, and for example, if you are joining in from a European Union country, you'll see that there are so many notices saying that this site or this, we are GDPR protected, we are GDPR compliant, or we have very high data privacy standards, we are concerned about your privacy. There are companies that came out after GDPR that focused on people's privacy. I remember those days, there were a couple of phones even that came out, a company called the Black Phone, and then there was another company called Article 14, which created phones that were focused on data privacy. It forced companies like Google to change the way it collected data about people. It forced companies like Apple to sometimes redesign some of their systems, the app stores. It forced companies like Facebook, which has got fines. Google and Facebook have got fined under GDPR, fairly large fines. But it forced them to seriously look at it, seriously invest it, and also just relook at the entire internal processes, internal practices to make sure that they were privacy first. In fact, given my discussions, as I shared with you gentlemen, I'm part of the drafting committee for the Sri Lankan data privacy legislation. So some of the legislation we looked at was GDPR, and our law that is going to come in is modeled after GDPR. Most of the GDPR's principles and concepts are there. And I remember we had a conversation with Facebook's country office in Sri Lanka, and they told me they are confident to face any legislation in any country because they are facing GDPR. So that's the kind of maturity, and that's the kind of investments now these companies have put in because of GDPR to ensure that they are more robust in their internal policies and how they handle people's data and privacy. So this basically was a game changer in terms of how data was used and how your data actually is protected a little bit more than what it is. So you have the European Union to be thankful, even if for those pesky notices that you get in terms of when you visit sites and they ask you, is it okay that we are tracking you? Is it okay that this site is collecting cookies about you? So you have GDPR to thank for all those pesky notices. So, but like I said, some people will ask, but why GDPR? Why do we need GDPR? I mean, is it absolutely necessary? It comes back to, gentlemen, what I spoke to you. Data, exploiting data, trading data, data brokering companies. We saw what happened to Cambridge Analytica. Can someone tell me what happened at Cambridge Analytica? Anyone? Or is everyone asleep? No one's heard of Cambridge Analytica? Mr. James? Mr. Steve? Mr. Marvin? Anyone? No one? Okay. So Cambridge Analytica was a, yes, Mr. James, that's correct. Cambridge Analytica got into quite a bit of soup because they looked after actually two of the most important elections in the world. One was Brexit. It is said that they had a hand in Brexit, and we all know how that went. Then the other one was the 2016 presidential election for President Trump. And needless to say, we all know how that went. And the allegation, and this was proven later on, that they used Facebook's data, and they wrote a survey software. So basically, what they told people was, yes, we're just gathering some information about you. You know, please, as a sample of the voters, you just please fill out this survey. And the survey, you know, it's a very mundane survey. It's something that you will encounter in your company or every day. But what you didn't know is, excellent, you remember. But what you didn't know is Facebook and this company, if, for example, let's say Mr. Marvin answered this survey, it's not only Mr. Marvin's data that Facebook or Cambridge Analytica was taking in. Remember that 10,000 data points that I told you? It was not only the person answering those data points or those information they were scraping. Imagine, for an instance, I'm going to assume that Mr. Marvin has about 500 friends. I'm sure it's more than that, but I'm just, for the example's sake, I'm going to say it's 500. All his 500 friends are also compromised. Cambridge Analytica is allowed now to gather information about all those 500 people and their friends and their friends and their friends. So you can imagine, within a short period of time, they had a very good idea of how a country's electorate or how a country's people voting population, what are their preferences, what are their likes and dislikes, what are their, you know, what issues are important to them, what issues trigger them, what issues they're closest to their heart. You know everything. Then it's a matter of working with a political party, working with a movement like Brexit to manipulate people, which, lack of a better word, I would say, manipulate people into agreeing to your point of view. So I'll give you a very good example.
I was gonna say that that was what was applied to Brexit as well.
Absolutely.
And now guess what? There's a shortage of HGV drivers, most of whom were from Europe, and now that's caused an issue with the fuel. So petrol stations are now empty because there's no delivery drivers for the fuel.
Wow.
You know, so, interesting.
Thank you for sharing that. And you know, very interestingly, you saw that people were misled, and correct me if I'm wrong, the day that the Brexit vote came, the highest Google search query was, what is Brexit? Because until that time, people didn't understand Brexit. They were driven, manipulated emotionally with the messaging that was given to them, the targeted messaging that was given to them. Another example I'll give you is the Trump campaign. The Trump campaign was very clever. They understood that Hillary Clinton was not popular. as a politician in certain quarters. The Democrats were not popular in certain quarters. And of course, you have the Bible Belt, the flyover states. So they identified all these states. And the messaging for Mr. Trump was very different for very different set of people. Now, for example, if you are a gun rights guy, you're pro-gun, the message you got was Hillary Clinton was going to take away your guns, nothing else. If you were, pro-life, Hillary Clinton was going to introduce legislation that was going to jeopardize that. If you were working class Americans, Hillary Clinton was presented as a elitist. So basically for each and every different segment, the messaging was so precise and so targeted against Hillary Clinton, she lost. It was one of the shock victories in the entire United States electoral history, if I'm not mistaken. There were a few shocks, but this was one of the greatest shocks, they say. Why? Because Cambridge Analytica used targeted messaging at targeted groups, using their prejudice, using their biases, using their likes and dislikes, which they knew already because of the data they were sitting on, and manipulated an election. They actually stole an election. So another Netflix documentary is something called The Greatest Heist, or Great Heist, if I'm not mistaken. Please take a chance, watch that. You will see what Cambridge Analytica did. It's about 1.5 hours. Gentlemen, please, if you have time, I know those rom-coms are there. If they can wait, you can always mention me. Say that, this is part of your cybersecurity assignment. Please take the time to watch it. Take the time to watch it, and very true, take the time to understand. Greatest heist. Thank you, Mr. Steve. Yes, take the time to understand how we are being manipulated as a society. So do we need GDPR? We need more than GDPR. We need tougher laws than GDPR, because it has come to a point now. If you can steal an election, I'm not saying that Mr. Trump did anything illegal here, by the way. I'm not saying Brexit, anything legal was done. But the fact that a wide majority of people were misled and they believed in. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's all debatable as to whether or not what he did was, morally or ethically correct. Because if you're using people's data to manipulate their sentiments and their views, their political views, then surely then there is a sort of loophole or a method of really stealing the vote. I mean, it can be debated,
Method
of some would say it's persuasion, but really and truly, it is a method, I think, of stealing the vote.
Absolutely, absolutely. I just wanted to be a little neutral when I said it, but the danger, Mr. Steve, and this is, thank you for sharing that. The democracy is at stake. The very fabric of our society is at stake, because we may lose the ability for free will because of all this information and all the data that is available and all the data that can be used to manipulate our choices. How many times, I'm sure this has happened to all of you all. Tell me if it hasn't happened. You have discussed about something. Oh, I want to buy now. I have a pet puppy. Oh, I want to buy a puppy pad. Oh, I'm looking for something for the dog. Lo and behold, a couple of hours later, you see the same ad. How many people this has happened to? Please tell me if it has not happened to you.
Oh, it's happened to me many times.
There you go. That tells you how much mining of your data, how much of manipulation of your data. See, the fact that you communicated something and within a couple of hours or even less sometimes, you see an ad on it. How crazy is that? And that is the world we're living in now. Gentlemen, this will get much worse in a year, in two, because the technology will keep getting better. We're not trying to, solve cancer or, do anything now. This is the technology. This is the focus now. how to.
Yeah, I think another trick is constant bombardment of the same advert. And in the end, even though you didn't want to get it, you end up getting it.
Absolutely. How many times you downloaded a game because it was so annoying? It's so bloody annoying. You keep seeing it, you keep seeing it, you keep seeing it. You just thought, for the heck of it, I'm going to just download and see what this app is about, or see what this game is about. How many times? How many times? And that is just an advertisement. From that to an election, and thank you, Mrs. Steve, for sharing that. And the repercussions of that people are feeling to this day. So are we correct to give so much power, so much data to these companies? I don't think so.
Sorry to interrupt. I don't know if it's related or not.
Everything's related, Mr. Marvin. Tell me.
Okay, but Elon Musk launched a Neuralink, which is connected to your brain.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's dangerous indeed.
Actually, there was a friend of mine from UK sent me a meme saying that now the hackers will steal the, well, imagine somebody hacking that. Imagine for a moment.
It's really dangerous.
Somebody, you have a neural link, you are connected to the internet, and somebody hacks your brain, you're a surgeon, and you're doing a surgery on a VVIP and you make a mistake. What happens? Assassinations.
You end up, disconnecting the lungs and replacing them with the heart.
Exactly. And it could be a small mistake. It could be a mistake where only he knows that it's a mistake, but he will do it. But your brain could be hacked. That's the only thing that the companies can't get into now. Your brain. Why do you think Elon Musk doesn't love us? That is the only piece of hardware they can't get into at the moment. That's what they're trying to get into. Your thoughts. That's, whatever said and done, your thoughts are still private, like it or not. And the companies, these big tech companies, they want to do something. Facebook also has a similar technology they wanted to do. They want to do something and make sure they get to that. So do we need GDPR? I think you know the answer to that question, gentlemen. We need GDPR. We need more than GDPR. We need to sometimes disconnect